The boycott industry has been around for a very long time. Its origins date back to 1880, where Captain Charles Boycott, a land agent, became the target of social ostracism or exclusion by the Irish Land League.
In 1880, in the reign of Victoria of England, a number of events occurred which led to a man giving his name to the languages of the world. That man was Captain Boycott.
Due to a poor harvest that year, landlord Lord Erne offered tenants a 10% decrease in rent. However, tenants demanded 25%, but were refused. Then, Boycott tried to evict 11 tenants, but found himself isolated as his workers stopped working in the fields and stables. Businessmen even stopped trading with him, and postmen refused to deliver his mail. Boycott was unable to hire anybody, and when the harvest was over, the strike was successful, and the word boycott spread everywhere. In general, boycotts are typically nonviolent, where people voluntarily choose to avoid a product, individual, company, or country, often driven by moral, social, political, or environmental concerns. Nowadays, with social media, it's easier to initiate a boycott. Some boycotts are successful, while others are not. People who call for boycotts typically want the company to suffer financially, or want the company to feel pressure by their undetermined threats. But even when they do that, people who publicly denounce that company may still purchase their products anyway, either voluntary or involuntarily. Also, people boycotting the company may not be that company's main target audience. Even though PETA boycotted KFC and probably many other fast food meat chains, the boycott won't have much of an impact on sales and revenue, as vegetarians and vegans aren't going to go there anyway, and those who do eat meat may simply just not care. Boycotts can be successful depending on how much media attention and coverage it gets. Going back to the use of social media and a boycotter's marketing tactics, 2 of these 3 cases were not successful, while 1 of them was, although I guess that depends on who you ask. Nestle, the well-known manufacturer of food products from powdered milk to chocolate, seasonings and condiments, and bottled water. The company began in 1866 under the foundation of the Anglo-Swiss Condensed Milk Company after Henry Nestle developed a breakthrough baby food in 1867. The two merged with one another in 1905 to form Nestle. In 1977, as baby food formula gained popularity, concerns arose specifically around Nestle's baby food formula and its marketing practices, particularly in developing countries. Their marketing strategy was written about in New Internationalist magazine in 1973. The report raised concerns over their marketing practices in developing countries, which served as the starting point of the Baby Killer campaign. After the publishing of the book The Baby Killer, a legal suit in Switzerland began a 2-year trial where the court was found in favor of Nestle because they couldn't be responsible for the infant deaths under criminal law. The defendants were fined a small amount of $400. And the judge wanted to note that Nestle should modify their publicity methods, which was seen as a victory for the defendants. That publicity reached the United States, where a boycott was launched by the Infant Formula Action Coalition, and it then spread to Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Europe. In 1978, the U.S. Senate held a hearing of the promotion of breast milk substitutes in developing countries, and 1 year later, an international meeting hosted by WHO and UNICEF were held calling for the development of international code of marketing to improve infant and early child feeding practices. It was argued by the International Baby Food Action Network and Save the Children that the promotion of instant formula over breastfeeding led to health problems, sicknesses, and death among infants in underdeveloped countries. These worries included sanitation and the nutritional value. Instant formula is to be mixed with water, which is often polluted, leading to disease among infants. Some mothers aren't even aware of the sanitation methods in bottle preparation because of low literacy rates. If they are unable to read in their native language, the directions may not make sense, or are able to perform the directions to its full extent of boiling the water. In case of finances, some mothers use less formula than required to save money and make the formula last longer. As a result, some infants don't receive enough nutrition required. While there are more advances to instant formula today, back then, breast milk was ultimately the better choice due to the natural benefits. Nutrients and antibodies are passed down to the baby, while hormones are released to the mother. Babies who are breastfed are protected from illnesses and infections and support brain and nerve development. The bond between the mother and baby is also an important benefit. When promoting their instant formula, Nestle resorted to a poor marketing tactic. Nestle employees in the sales department dressed as nurses, visiting mothers in hospitals or at their homes to promote the formula and its benefits. Some were confused, believing these salespeople were actually nurses and not Nestle representatives hidden in disguise. If the milk nurses were not allowed inside of the hospitals, they would wait outside for the mothers to leave and then provide their samples. They would make the mothers believe that their milk was not sufficient enough and that the instant formula was a better choice. However, instant formula became a dependence for the mothers as their breast milk would dry up if they stopped feeding. Then came the financial burden. Either Nestle didn't think their tactics through, or they simply did not care. The Nestle boycott never officially ended, as many still boycott Nestle products today. They have even more controversies surrounding their business tactics. In 1984, boycott coordinators met with Nestle to create the Nestle Infant Formula Audit Commission, where they pledged to implement the code, and the boycott was suspended. But a second phase began in 1988 after finding Nestle was not adhering to the code. Nestle claimed they were compliant with the code, but in 2018, a study at the National Bureau of Economic Research found that over 10 million infants died between 1960 and 2015 from Nestle's baby formula, used by mothers in lower-income countries who did not have access to clean water sources. More recently, in 2024, a report found Nestle adds more sugar to baby food sold in lower-income countries compared to healthier versions sold in more well-off markets. September of 1965, in Delano, California, more than 1,000 farm workers and members of the Agricultural Workers Organization Committee walked out on strike against Delano, protesting poor pay and working conditions. The Filipinos asked Cesar Chavez, an American labor leader and farm right activist having previously led a Latino farm workers union, to join their strike. Cesar and the leaders of National Park Workers Association believed it would be years before their union was ready for a strike. He and the union joined the Filipino workers on September 16th, but declared this would be a different kind of strike. He wanted the Latino and Filipino workers to work together, asking them to remain nonviolent. The strike grew support from outside of the Central Valley, as well as from other unions, which led a 300-mile march from Delano to Sacramento. As a result, strikers boycotted table grapes, spreading to North America. The strike continued on, and 2 years later, during the winter of 1967, between 1968, some of the strikers grew impatient as nothing was coming out of their strike, and the weather made everything more dreary. There were discussions of violence amongst the young male workers, growing against the growers who abused them and believing they could prove their manliness through violence. But Cesar rejected those thoughts, believing you're not a man if you fight back. He believed nonviolence was the right way, and rather than giving lectures, led by example. In February of 1968, Cesar announced he would be fasting, going 25 days without food and only drinking water. Some were divided by his act, not understanding why he was doing it and worrying about his health. As a result from the fast, he lost 35 pounds. Doctors said his health was in danger, but the fast worked. The talks of violence also stopped. Cesar's fast ended during a Catholic Mass in Delano with thousands gathered around. Even the Senator, Robert F. Kennedy, was there. The strike and boycott continued. Cesar's next plan was to study successful strikes in history, such as Gandhi's boycott of salt in 1930, a salt march lasting 24 days where he and his followers marched 240 miles in protest of the British salt monopoly, and the Montgomery bus boycott, a 13-month civil rights protest that ended the U.S. Supreme Court ruling of segregation on public buses being wrongful. Cesar and the United Farm Workers decided to boycott in a major label dispute. Farm workers could appeal for help to the American people. Strikers even traveled across the U.S. and Canada, telling their stories and organizing mass gatherings. They were joined by thousands who helped organize the boycott. In conclusion, millions stopped eating grapes. By 1970, the boycott was successful. Growers signed first union contracts for better pay, benefits, and protections. Goya Foods was founded in 1933 by Don Unanue in New York. He and his wife opened a small store called Unanue's & Sons in 1922, converting to wholesale in mid-1930s. Once he passed away, his son Joseph ran the company, which had grown larger, producing 800 food items by 1998, with 2,000 employees. As of now, the company is run by Robert Unanue, a child to one of Don's children. When the pandemic hit, the company donated over 300 pounds of food to food banks and organizations around the U.S., and has supported charities, scholarships, and events during times of crisis. In 2020, Robert visited the White House on a Thursday, announcing the company would be donating 1 million cans of garbanzo beans and 1 million pounds of food to food banks in the United States as part of the Hispanic Prosperity Initiative, which Trump had created to improve access to educational and economical opportunities. During the visit, Robert said the U.S. was blessed to have Trump as their leader.
Today, it gives me great honor. And by the way, we're all truly blessed at the same time to have a leader like President Trump, who is a builder. And that's what my grandfather did. He came to this country to build, to grow, to prosper. And so we have an incredible builder, and we pray. We pray for our leadership, our president. We pray for our country, that we will continue to prosper and to grow.
But some people didn't like what he said, even questioning why he said that. His comments about the president sparked debates and controversy on social media as people were upset that a Hispanic company would be in support of a president they claimed did not support them. Very quickly, it was decided they would all boycott Goya Foods. Democratic representatives even had their own things to say about the whole ordeal, such as Democratic Socialist Alexandria Cortez, who said she would now have to Google how to make her own adobo. Julian Castro, a former housing secretary and former presidential candidate, claimed Goya has been a staple for Hispanic households for a very long time and that now, Americans should think twice before buying their products. On Friday, Goya Foods issued a news release about the donations, but did not address the controversial comments. Robert appeared on Fox News and defended his comments and his company. He stated it is suppression of speech and that he even worked with Michelle Obama in 2012 during her campaign to promote healthier meal choices. He ended his statement saying he would not apologize for what he said, that he stood by what he said.
And so you're allowed to talk good or to praise one president, but you're not allowed, when I was called to be part of this commission to aid in economic and educational prosperity, and you make a positive comment, all of a sudden, that's not acceptable. So, I'm not apologizing for saying, and especially if you're called by the President of the United States, you're going to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy. No, thank you. I didn't say that to the Obamas, and I didn't say that to President Trump.
His supporters in return started a campaign of their own in support of buying Goya products. As a result, sales of products rose 56% in Republican-dominated counties and temporarily increased in Democratic-dominated areas where the brand was more popular. While the statements ended up doing good for the company, the board of directors were not happy and wanted to remove Robert from his position, but they couldn't, due to family-owned business regulations. While 2 of these 3 cases involved failed boycotts, you could say there is a success, but on the other side of the 2 parties, Nestle has had many boycotts and will probably continue to have many more. The successful Delano Grape Company boycott allowed for union contracts which granted better working conditions and benefits. Then the Goya Foods boycott turned into a boycott, because rather than people refusing to buy Goya, many more people purchased their products and the company's sales increased. What Robert Unanue said wasn't even really that bad, but after the anger from those on the other side of the political spectrum, I guess it just shows politics should be left out of business. The boycott industry will continue to go on without stopping anytime soon. It's only a matter if the boycott will be a success or will fail, like most of them do.